What's up everybody, Trinity here, and welcome back to the 2nd Street Marvel. In today's video, I'm going to be reviewing Excalibur issue number 1. Now this is the new series spinning out of Jonathan Hickman's relaunch of X-Men in the Marvel Universe after House of X and Powers of X. This is the 3rd series that we are getting, and we see in this series there's some things going on in this book that we see that we've seen kind of mirrored in the previous 2 series that have come out in X-Men issue number 1 and Marauders number 1. This story is being written by Teenie Howard, and the art is done by Marcus Toe. Eric Arciniega is the color artist, and the letterer is VC's Corey Petit, and the design is done by Tom Mueller. And I'll go ahead and show you guys that there. You gotta love it. We got, again, 2 pages full of, for a title page, whoever would have thought to keep it down to 1. So this book opens up with some of my favorite things out of all of these books is, this nice page full of words instead of giving us a story and all that kind of stuff. But basically what's going on here is we see that it's saying that on the day that Charles Xavier addressed the world and told them about the mutant drugs and Krakoa and everything, at the same time, Apocalypse was introducing himself to all of his fellow sorcerers, and he was basically speaking real matter of fact, like just kind of like Charles Xavier was talking about, back in the day, like everybody looked to magicians to come and, like bless their crops, bless the waters, bless their, their bodies, for no matter what ailment it was, for basically for religion, for anything, people went to these magicians to seek them out. And nowadays, everybody just looks to doctors and scientists. And he's saying, but no more. We have Krakoa now, and we're going to raise like the first generation of people here who don't have to live under this old thought that all these trials and tribulations that we've gone through have made us stronger. He's like, we don't have to. He's like, that was a lie. The same thing as Xavier was saying. That was all a lie, and we're gonna change that. And that's kind of what he's talking about here at the very beginning of the book. And then we open up in Otherworld, the land of Camelot, and. And of course that seems natural just given the title of the book, right? And then what we see here is we see that the royal family is basically out right now. How would you say King Arthur is missing, and so the royal family isn't there right now, and Morgan Le Fay is basically there as being the queen, and she goes to one of her Knights Guard and shows him this gateway, and she's asking like, what is this? And it's like this this little pool of water in it. He goes there to look at it, and she's like, what is going on here? There's something going on this gateway here, and she's seeing it, and you can see that it's like a Krakoan gateway, as there are the flowers of Krakoa growing through there, and that's kind of where we open up at, and then we open up here into more of these pages that have these introduction pages, I guess, and we see the heroes that are going to be here. We got Betsy Braddock, Rogue, Gambit, Jubilee, Apocalypse, Trinary, and Brian Braddock, who we're going to be dealing with in this story. So then after that, we open up. God, where is this? We're in the Braddock Academy in England, and we see that Betsy Braddock is preparing to leave her brother Brian Braddock's home to move to Krakoa, and they're there exchanging pleasantries, just kind of the conversations that you would have with a loved one as they are moving out or leaving. If you would ever just move out of your mother's house, this is the kind of conversation you'd be having. Sorry, I had to, but they're kind of talking like that, how they're gonna miss each other, how they know each other so well, and different things like that, and how he's hoping her the best once she gets there to Krakoa, and when she finally goes through the gate and gets to Krakoa, we can see that everything's cool, man. It's alive, they're living it up in Krakoa, man. There's some mutant love going on here, and that's something kind of that's kind of taken, being discussed here. Like we see Apocalypse making some funny conversation here. As like one of the funny things he keeps talking about is how we've seen Magneto coming out and being a little kind of grandiose kind of being, like yeah, I'm the man. We see Apocalypse kind of doing some of that same kind of stuff, and like people are keep calling him Apocalypse, and he's like, well, no, call me, and he's saying Apocalypse in Krakoan language. He's like, call me that, and everybody's like, yeah, okay, pal. And it's funny though because Apocalypse here is saying the festivities fascinate me. Our people celebrating our homecoming for the first time ever. Oh no, what is it? Where is it? He says that here. The children that come out of tonight's unions will be the most powerful generation of mutants the world has ever seen. Born in paradise, raised to flourish. So, he's all about this. Well, Trinary goes to him and is talking to him about this gateway. So they end up going to his the grove of theoretical gates, Apocalypse's personal study. So we can see that this is like his personal place, and they're kind of studying these gates, and they have this gate that hasn't been accessible. Like nobody's come or gone through it, nobody can get through it, and they're trying to figure out what's wrong. And she's Trinary is sitting there saying, well, we've kind of looked at everything, we've run all the numbers, and once again he turns to like, well, you're looking to science, where he's talking more about magic and sorcery. And he says, have you ever heard of Otherworld, the land of Camelot? And then we get more of these great pages with just all these words and stuff on it. Now the thing here is this is saying from the Krakoan grimoires. And what it's talking about here is it's saying like there's a magical certainty posited in the text of nearly every occult paradigm that as above, so below. And they're talking, and basically what I'm getting out of this story here is a little bit of the story is that they've had this recent influx of mutants coming to, basically they're starting to thrive again on the Earth. Here, in the Marvel universe, they're starting to thrive again, and Krakoa is there. They got these gateways, so that's going to be reflected in Otherworld, which is basically like the yin and the yang. I'm guessing is how they're taking this. So, that's being reflected in Otherworld, and that's why in that body of water, in that little gateway, Morgan Le Fay was seeing those Krakoan flowers. And so basically what affects one affects the other, and we can see that's kind of what they're talking about here. But they also talk about this kind of power shift, this paradigm shift, about some of the use of some of their symbols here, and they're talking about X as being superior, and how the old way was, before you needed so many mages to do like this, this circle basically of magic, where now, with the X you only need 4. It only takes 4 instead of a whole host of them. And then we open up here, after this, we end up in New Yorkshire at the Coven of Solar Blackwood. And that is where we see Morgan Le Fay shows up basically to Earth saying, hey man, what's going on here with my gateway? Somebody here is betraying me, and I am basically not going to allow anybody on Earth, any earthly beings, to use magic here until my gate is fixed. And so they're sitting there like, hey man, it wasn't us, like we're on your side. And she goes, well, regardless, you're not going to be able to use this gate. So through all this time, we see Betsy Braddock we get back to Krakoa. Betsy Braddock is there hanging out, and she is being sought out by Fabio Medina, Goldballs, who is now going by the name of Egg, and he brings her to basically where the birthing chamber, where they're giving birth to all of the new mutants and everything, where they're all being reborn, and says, hey, we need you to come get your brother Jamie out of here. He's being a real jerk and mucking up the place. And that's kind of a lot of this issue is kind of, how in X-Men issue number 1 we got a lot of the Summers family. Here we're getting a lot of the Braddock family. So she goes there and has a conversation with him and says, hey man, why don't you stop being a jerk? Like you're reborn, you should be happy, because he's sitting there kind of being an ass. And so she uses some of her psychic powers to kind of stop him and put him at bay. And we see that Fabio Medina tells her, he tells her, like, hey, stop that, because those psychic powers could affect the eggs in here. We, while they're incubating and everything, we don't need that going on. So, just calm it down. So they do, and then Apocalypse comes to Betsy and says, hey, you know what? Like, we've got this problem with this gateway, and we need somebody with other worldly powers to help us fix this. Could you go get your brother, Captain Britain, and have him go to Otherworld and figure out what's going on with this gateway? Because he already knows this gateway leads to Otherworld. So she goes back to England and asks, Betsy goes and asks her brother, like, hey, they've got this problem going on, in Otherworld. Just some stuff's not cool. And they need to get this gateway fixed. And, he's like, well, he's being summoned. He was already putting on a suit. And he's like, well, I'll go there and figure out what's going on. So she's like, hey, well, I'm coming with you. If you're going to go do this, I'm coming with you. So they both end up leaving for Otherworld. And once they get there, they are met by Morgan Le Fay and her disciples. And of course, naturally, she's kind of pissed and wondering what the hell's going on. Then we return once again back to Krakoa, as we can see, everybody just kind of there hanging out. We see Rogue and Gambit kind of having this conversation, talking about wanting to repopulate the nation of Krakoa and just mutants, bringing them forth again so they can flourish. And that's what it's all about in Krakoa, man. It's peace, love, and make some mutants. Make more mutants. And so they're sitting there having that kind of conversation, and then Apocalypse actually comes to Rogue and says, "Hey, I need your help. We've got this problem with this gate, and I think you might be able to help." And at the same time, he is actually looking for Jubilee, who was one of the last people to talk to Betsy Braddock, who took off so brashly and ended up going to Otherworld with her brother when they were all supposed to go back there to meet with Apocalypse so they could figure out a plan of what they were going to do to get this gateway working again or shut down or whatnot. And so in Otherworld, there's a battle going on here, as Brian and Betsy are fighting against Morgan Le Fay, and Morgan just basically says, like, look, this isn't even a fight I have to fight, really. She tells Captain Britain, like, aren't you the Guardian here? Aren't you supposed to protect the throne? Protect it. And he's like, oh man. So he's basically summoned and taken up, and he basically he ends up having to help her. I mean, because that's like his job, right? So he has to defend that throne, and you can see here that he's kind of against what's going on, but he still ends up having to go attack his sister, even though he's conscious of what he's doing, and he's doing it all reluctantly. And and in the meantime, Apocalypse is trying to figure out what's going on back in Krakoa, and he's like, oh, he gets a psychic link to Betsy Braddock. He's like, I just need this gateway breached. So what happens is he uses Rogue to touch the gateway, which can bring down its defenses a little, affect the magic that's being used to block it. And so he can get through, and he finds out that Betsy is in distress, and he tells her, like, hey, you need to do something to breach this gateway. So she takes, and she throws her, takes her psionic sword and throws it at the gateway and completely, destroys it, and then throws Rogue back into what seems like, she falls into, a coma, and she's covered in all these flowers and everything. And, of course, Gambit's mad. And so she's kind of stuck there in this comatose state, I guess you could say Rogue is. And meanwhile, in Otherworld, Betsy is fighting with her brother, and he, strange things are going on in this fight, and he ends up giving her his amulet. And she goes ahead and takes the amulet from him and just disappears from Otherworld and reappears back in Krakoa, and everybody kind of notices, like, hey, what's going on? And they're like, oh, it's Betsy Braddock, she's back. And Apocalypse is like, no, you're standing. This is Captain Britain, and we see that she arrives back in Krakoa as Captain Britain, decked out in her new suit. Back on Earth to help put a stop to whatever is going on. And then the book ends with one of these humans who is a sorcerer on Earth, basically taking these same kind of jewels and going, because she's part of this coven, going to try to basically become part of this coven of Akaba. And then they speak a little bit more about that here, a little bit more at the end of the book. And I gotta be honest with you, I didn't think this book was really going to be all that great. And I've got to say, I think they set up a pretty good tale here in this first issue of Excalibur. Now, I'm not sure that I'm going to continue to pull this title out of, this whole series getting ready to come out. There's just a whole bunch of titles coming out. I've already got a pretty big comic book pull list, but altogether, I gotta say, I really thought this title was pretty good. It set up a pretty good story of what's going to be going on here, I think. As far as I know, the best I could guess. I mean, it's named Excalibur. They go to Camelot. King Arthur is missing. Morgan Le Fay is there. I mean, just a whole lot of things going on at play, and we can see that there are obviously problems going on with the Krakoan gates as far as getting to and from certain places. We've seen in Marauders there was just there was actually people, certain countries and people actually keeping other mutants from accessing the gates, where here we see in other worlds, Morgan Le Fay has pretty much shut it off and said, no, nobody's gonna be using this gate, not as long as I'm around, and not as long as there's all this funny stuff going on in my world, and I'm not even gonna allow you humans to use magic. So I don't know, I'm not sure if that's one of her powers that she can do, if she can just magically snap her fingers and be like, hey, that's it, nobody's using magic, dang it, but apparently she can. So I don't know. It's just just some things that I don't know about that I'm sure they're going to explore more as these issues go on. Now there are plenty of things at play here, like I said, that just kind of going on in this world that like I said, I don't really fully understand everything going on here, and that's perfectly okay, because I mean, for somebody like me, not knowing everything that's going on, it makes me want to read more about this story and continue reading on and finding out what all of this is leading to. But like I said, obviously we can see there's something bigger going on. Maybe something, I'm not sure if it's specifically this book or anything, but I've noticed that over the past couple of weeks, Marvel has been putting out those True Believers issues. Some of them with a lot of characters relating to people who were in this book. There was one on Jubilee, Richter. God, who else did they do one on? They recently did one. Did they do one on Gambit? I can't remember. But they did. They did one on Betsy Braddock as well in those Marvel's True Believers. So a bunch of those dollar issues, I'm sure, are just tales to, they're $1 they're probably doing to kind of get you caught up with some of the story and the background on some of these characters that are coming out of these different Marvel, these different X-Men books that are coming out. But it just seems a little odd. The past couple weeks have been characters that are featured here in this Excalibur title. So again, I don't know. I won't confess to know too much about that. Like, I'm not really big in the mutant world or anything like that, and haven't read a whole bunch of X-Men books, but I have really been enjoying what's been going on in these in this this kind of mutant universe, as it has been reset by Jonathan Hickman there in the Marvel universe. But I don't know. Like I said, that's just all if you ask me. Like I said, I thought this book was a pretty good read. I really wasn't expecting it to be as good as it is. The art throughout it is actually really nice. I like the art in it. The coloring is pretty good. I mean, you can see they're there on Krakoa now. Some of it is a little more like modern style or something. As to more, some of the classic looks. But I mean, again, I thought this story was really well written. The art in it is beautiful. The coloring kind of matches a lot of what's going on with the story. So I don't know. Like I said, I thought the book was pretty good, but you can make sure that you can look forward to more reviews on this series coming up here on the channel. But let me know down in the comments below, did you read Excalibur issue number 1? Is it something you're going to continue to put on your pull list? And what did you think about this issue? That's all I have for this video today, folks. Thank you all so much for tuning into the Second Street Marvel. If you haven't already, please make sure you subscribe and click that little bell so you get notifications anytime I have uploaded new content. That also sends you out notifications anytime I plan on doing a live video. And while you're at it, make sure you give this video a thumbs up or give it a thumbs down if you don't like it. I don't take it personal. But while you're at it, make sure that you share it with a friend and invite them to come hang out with us here on the Second Street Marvel. You all have a very good day. Have a great rest of your week. Happy reading. Let's talk down in the comments, and we'll see you in the next video. Later.